Hi, everyone. I apologize for the delay, and thank you all for coming. We're going to move right into our public hearing on the Church and Waterfield Streets intersection. Let's see who's here. So it looks like we're being joined by our town engineer, Beth Rudolph, and a representative from Tool Design, who are our traffic engineers, Karen Fitzgerald. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. So we have a brief presentation tonight by Tool. We've been working since the board last met to move forward with the design for Church and Waterfield. We've been moving ahead with that design work, and we wanted to take a pause and come back to the board to present where we are today and get feedback from the board as well as the public. And then we'll move forward with finalizing the design plan. So with that, I'm happy to turn it over to Karen. I believe she has a brief presentation.
Right, can I just interject just as a bit of context that this project became a priority back in, I think it was October of 2018, where a beloved retired teacher citizen in our town was actually crossing Waterfield and struck by a vehicle that was turning off of Church into Waterfield, and ultimately passed away due to her injuries. So this is a real priority for us.
Correct. Yes.
And also just in general, I think what Tool has come up with to address the intersection will also really improve it in terms of the walkability and being able to negotiate it as as a driver of a vehicle too. So I think all in all, it's a very high priority and good project.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great. Well, good evening, everyone. As Beth said, I'm Karen Fitzgerald. I'm working with Tool Design. I've been working on this project for over a year now. I'm just going to share my screen. I have a PowerPoint. Can walk us through where we are with the project right now. Here we go. Share. Okay. Here we go. Can everyone see that? Okay, great. Okay, so just to go quickly over where we are, we did a safety assessment in 2019, met with the select board shortly after that. We did recommendations for short-term enhancements, which is what you're seeing here in the photo, some striping to increase that sort of pedestrian visibility of people crossing here. And then a quick preliminary design and estimate where we recommended basically pulling the curbs out to where we're showing the striping, essentially, in order to slow down traffic, also get pedestrians out so cars could see them when they're trying to cross the street, and just make the whole intersection just safer.
And sorry, Karen, to interrupt. We seem to still be, at least I am still seeing the first slide. I don't know.
The process to date?
All I can see is the header slide,
the cover slide.
The cover slide. Yep.
Sorry. How about? Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
I don't know. Let me see. I'm going to stop and share again. Let me try this. Share. Okay. Okay, cover slide.
Yeah.
Okay, how about that?
It's good.
Okay.
To date.
Apologize. Okay, so my colleague Erica was at the select board in January of 2020. end of January, and then we went into 25% design, and now we're at final design. So this intersection quite well, but existing conditions. So the challenges that we faced once we started getting into real technical design was mostly drainage. And as you know, Waterfield is quite steep coming off of Church. You can kind of see in this photo how much higher the center of Church Street is from the building edge. So any kind of adjustment of that sidewalk area presented some challenges in making sure that that drained not into the building, and it was contained. These are some photos also that we were looking at. There's a large electrical vault that runs down Waterfield Road and also along Church Street. And again, this corner here on Church was quite tricky in grading and drainage. This is the other side of Church Street, and none of the existing pedestrian ramps were ADA compliant, so that required some new engineering and grading of these sidewalks, as well as this sidewalk where you come out of the common, and you're stopping way back here before you can see anyone who's coming along on Church Street. So this is the survey diagram, and you can see the stop bar for Waterfield approaching Church is down here. That common walkway comes out here. So you are pretty far down, and the cars need to creep up pretty far into the intersection in order to get visibility of anyone coming on Church Street. So here we are in final design. This is a diagram of our final design. We are proposing curb extensions on all three corners here and here. Regrading of this portion of Waterfield Road in order to make this crossing ADA compliant. The cross slope of the crosswalk needed to be flattened out. So this is a fill area of Waterfield Road. We're also removing and replacing this brick everywhere you see this brick color here and in kind, so it matches what you've got there now. These areas in green would be planting strips, and I'll talk about those in a second. Also bike lanes, so we're proposing sort of share the road, sharrows on most of Church here, but through the intersection, a bike lane just to get bikes safely through this intersection on this side and then on this side, just for that length. Dick Street, we're looking at that, working on these curb ramps on Dick Street. And then, of course, all of the roadway striping and the drainage that I talked about. Also, we are replacing a tree that is in this area currently and putting it into this planting area. So that planting area, let me just zoom back. This red line is the section, cross section through this planting area. The building on Church, this sidewalk is draining into the planting area. They will be segments of granite blocks for seating along the edge, but the water will be able to drain into this area. And then it's hard to see on this section, but you've got about a foot difference between the roadway, bottom of curb here, and the existing building edge. So this is where that tricky drainage engineering came in, trying to make sure that all of that road drainage wasn't going into the building. There's been a lot of discussion on the intersection standards and the traffic engineering there. This is just a page from Mass Highway 2006 Manual for Design. And this is basically what we follow when we look at turning radii and access of different size vehicles coming through that intersection. You can see that on the left side, it shows you which diagrams they recommend. And then on the right side, it's A, B, C, D. So we're talking about local roads here. And MassDOT allows for a 10-foot encroachment if necessary for the larger vehicles on these types of intersections. So I'm going to run through a series of turning analysis that we did for the final design, different size vehicles. This is basically a box truck. It's a SU30, so it's 30 feet long, single unit truck, meaning the cab and the box don't, they work together. And you can see on this diagram here that the trucks can make that turn in either direction. This will require, coming over the bike lane, but I think that's, any vehicles that's turning except for single occupancy vehicle can make that turn, but it will quickly be in the correct lane once it makes the turn. This is a semi of a wheelbase of 40 feet. So this is semi trailer truck. And I did have the opportunity to talk to Ralph D'Agostino about his deliveries and what he needs for access for deliveries. And he confirmed that semis do deliver to his shop and also some of the other shops along this Waterfield Road area. And this is a pretty large truck, and you see that it will encroach on the other side, but quickly be in the right lane in this direction, and then again in this direction. The fire truck is a ladder truck. And again, there'll be some encroachment coming around the corner onto Waterfield Road from Church Street. This direction is a little bit easier to make, going towards downtown. And then we looked at the city bus that makes that route, the 134 MBTA bus, and that seems to have an easy turning radius there. And then a quick discussion. I know this has been an issue, construction costs. When we first did the preliminary design and estimate, we estimated $130,000 or so for the design. That was before we really got into the issues around the intersection, the utilities, as you saw in the survey. It's quite a snake pit of utilities there. Also working with the drainage, making sure that works, and what that would take to get that intersection to drain correctly. So it was a complex design in the end. Our estimate right now is at $440,000, which includes a 15% contingency. And we typically don't have that high of a contingency at this point in our design, but we have been seeing construction costs just escalate over the year and a half monthly. Every time we do a new estimate out of the MassDOT data, it goes up quite a bit. So we decided to keep that 15% contingency in this final design estimate, just to cover ourselves by the time this goes out to bid, in case the prices just keep going up. If anyone's been in construction lately, they've seen it. And then the police detail as well. We carried a pretty hefty police detail based on other projects that we've been working on. And this does really depend on a lot of factors during construction, but we thought it'd be prudent to include enough money in the police detail. And so the increases basically are due to much more complex grading and drainage and materials than we originally had, pictured, and then just a lot of construction cost inflation over the last year. And those are the two biggest factors in the increase in construction. So that was a really quick run through. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have, or go back to a slide that you'd like to see again.
So does anyone on the select board have any questions?
Susan, I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Good. So Karen, thank you for the presentation.
Yep.
My first question is, you mentioned at the mouth of Waterfield Road, you need to regrade that to make the sidewalk ADA accessible. Is that hill going to be steeper or less steep?
So this gets flattened out, and then we're basically trying to follow this 7 to 8% grade here. Okay. And make sure that we are, smoothly transitioning into, so it is 7 to 8%.
And what is it currently, do you know?
Yeah, it's about that. It's about 7%. So
okay.
Up at the top here, because this edge needs to be higher than existing. So this is what we needed to make sure it's a smooth transition. Okay. Up through the intersection, not just to the sidewalk, to the crosswalk, but all the way up into the street. Yeah.
And just my second question is, the mouth there looks pretty narrow, and I understand that's the point. But were considerations given to winter and snow and ice and those concerns when designing this?
Yeah, we've been talking with Jay Gill all along about maintenance and snow removal. So as far as snow removal goes, I think some of these green areas, the way we've got them designed, they can take some snow, but I wouldn't recommend piling the snow up here because the visibility will be hard to see anyone who's standing at this crosswalk. But this basically is the same width as the striped area that's out there right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Is that green area, does that have to be grass for infiltration purposes, or can it be paved? Can it be a larger sidewalk?
Yeah, no, this side does not need infiltration. This area does. This area is an infiltration area. But we sort of balance the costs, and we did toy around with making it brick, but it's so much more costly. I have to say we have I'm trying to remember exactly, but about 100,000 in brick. Brick is very expensive, and this is what we saw down on the Mystic Valley Parkway as well. Mm-hmm. So we opted for the planting area there, just trying to keep the costs down, construction costs.
Yeah, and sorry, this is Beth, and that's an excellent point, Karen. Mariana, that the sidewalk is actually expanding. So if you can, I know you can't see my cursor, but maybe Karen, you could point it out where the existing curb line is. So it's almost a doubling of size right at the corner there. So it will feel a lot more generous than it does today. It's kind of a tight spot when you're crossing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you know, we did kind of look at this side in particular, for, you know, do we pave it or do we plant it? But in the end, the costs were just getting so high that we decided the planting would be the way to go.
And the planting area has granite curbing all along the whole
Yep.
turn.
Yeah, right. Granite curbing everywhere.
Okay.
Everywhere along the bump outs, granite curbing is used, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the bump out on the, well, I forget which orientation, but here, where it looks north here on the Bank of America side, I mean, I think that's absolutely necessary because right now that is a spot that is always taken up by somebody running for 10 minutes to the ATM. But when there's 6 people an hour parking there for 10 minutes, then that means it's always covered up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Right. Sure.
Anyone else?
Yeah, if I could just
Mike.
jump in for a second, Susan.
Yep.
Thank you, Karen, for presenting and pinch hitting here a little bit. Appreciate you coming in, and Beth as well. You know, this is almost an impossible intersection to redesign. I mean, I definitely realized that, and we've walked out there a few times, and certainly I drive through there every day, and I had the same concern that Rich had a little bit with the driving, you know, up towards Church from Waterfield. You know, it makes you real anxious, you know, because your car is going up and you don't have great sight lines. So I at least appreciate that we've shrunken the crosswalks. I think it's been consistent with what we've been doing over you know, throughout town, and what we did at Mystic Valley Parkway and Main Street in front of McCall as well. So it looks, you know, like this is a great design, and it was helpful to see that kind of cross section there of where the new planning is and the infiltration work as well. You see the kind of crushed stone there, and it seems like that's going to solve a lot of the problem that we had that maybe increased the cost quite a bit from what we initially saw, was managing some of the water. So, you know, I think it looks great. This has come a long way. It's certainly necessary, and I think it was really necessary for us to not do just a short-term solution here, but really kind of expand this scope to get it right, because I think there's probably no intersection in town that has greater throughput of pedestrian and car traffic and bike traffic, frankly, bus traffic, large vehicle traffic as well. So it's certainly essential, and so I appreciate all the work and kind of fitting everything in. You know, the cost increase is what we've been seeing with all our projects, and the longer we wait, the more it costs, and it's just the nature of the beast. And you know, you see a $50,000 number on the police detail, you know, which is a lot for a project like this. But you know, I imagine that because of the traffic there, you know, it's going to require quite a bit of attention from public safety. So anyway, just commenting on the project. I know we've been working on this one for a while, so I think this is a good solution, albeit an expensive one.
One thing I didn't mention is that I don't know if the last time you heard about a variance for ADA, when we were looking at the sort of the 25% design, and we have redesigned and redesigned and redesigned and we don't need a variance now. So that's one good bit of news. It was mostly for this corner of Church Street. Just getting that ramp to work was really tricky. So we did work it out, so no variance is needed.
Just jumping on there, that we are very happy that we don't have to get a variance.
Yeah.
Very, very good news. Thank you.
Definitely good news.
It's great on the design side that you've been so responsive to the ADA requirements as well, because they've, you know, are really otherwise very difficult to travel through the existing intersection. And sight lines are terrible in the existing location. So if you are lower, or you're, you know, trying to make your way through there, it becomes more difficult. So I appreciate it. And I think that raising the crosswalk gives quite a bit of visibility from the kind of left turning traffic to pedestrians as well, that are going from Church to Waterfield. So
Yeah.
anyway, thank you. I think it looks great.
Great. Great. Well, thank you,
Amy?
everyone.
Well, I need to thank you. And I would just point out that it looks like this ramp for the ADA requirements on the Waterfield side, on the left side. Is that going to be cement, a different material, a lighter colored material, or is that just for the purposes of the diagram?
Yeah, so the ramps are concrete. And then we decided just to pave this area as well.
I think that's actually, from a visibility standpoint, really good, because that area is in the shade a lot of the time. And if a human being standing there is going to be a contrast in color to the concrete, I think that would also be a plus. So that seems like a great decision.
Yeah, it is really shady there. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I'd have to open this up to the public. I know that there are probably people who would like to speak on this. I would ask you to raise your hand. We'll call on you. Let's see. So I see Sally Dale. Let's see. Well,
Sally's allowed to talk. I think she just has to mute.
oh, okay.
Hi, this is Sally. Sitting here with my landscape architect friend and husband, Dennis Dale, who's actually worked with Karen. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Dennis.
And so he had, I don't know, Dennis, he had a few points, but
Okay.
all in all, I think it's fabulous that the town is addressing the safety at this intersection. I actually avoid going north on Waterfield to turn left if I want to get through town. I just don't do that here because it's a bad intersection. But Dennis, your points?
Yeah, it seemed to be a number of things that I was curious about. The concrete paving, the desire lines where the planting is and the concrete paving and the brick don't seem to make sense relative to where someone's going to cross the street. They're going to cut across the
Patisserie.
Yeah, either from Patisserie over to the bank through that planting bed, and then the zebra stripes don't seem to align with your walkway in that location. It's kind of jarring, just the kind of concrete meeting the brick, and that there's no radius there that would make the two of them kind of come together. Curious about maintenance and what that plant material is. You had mentioned that it was kind of shady in that location, and whether that's just going to be grass in that small area. Obviously, it can't be irrigated. So what is that going to look like just on a early spring day? A lot of people are walking through that area. I'm not sure about the granite block seating. This is not really a park. It's a very active corner, and that not sure who would actually want to sit right there, and whether that makes any sense. It's expensive, and unless it's directing people not to go through the recessed area, that's part of it.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Now you were talking about an ADA variance. Now, if there are a lot of places in the world where the street is steeper than ADA requirements, so I don't think you need to provide ADA accessibility if it's in such a condition that if you're being required to put a 2% cross slope, you're going to get quite a hump going up the street or flattening out the whole. I'm not sure how much of the intersection you're repaving to make this essentially tabletopping that whole corner. And also, it wasn't clear in your section whether what happens from the bank side all the way across the street, if you're flattening out the whole street in that location to make it work, because you had mentioned that it kind of
Yeah.
dropped off pretty quickly. So, I mean, that was just a few, things I just noticed offhand. And also, this is also the entrance to this new grandiose memorial that was made in the park, and that there's an entrance on that other corner. Does that on the corner on the common side? There's a pathway right there, and there's also a couple of trees. Is that have those? I mean, I don't see them on the survey, and it's hard to tell because the building's not on the survey nor the other site elements.
Well, this is the design drawing. But
so I was just wondering what was happening in that location.
Okay. So this is the path right now, and these plantings will remain as they are right now. This is the back of the sidewalk, and that stays as is.
That's the existing.
So we will just connect to that pathway. This little area here, we're just grading into that, so it's a nice transition into that asphalt pathway. As far as the section goes, that section was drawn only for this area, but we're not regrading this whole road. The only part of the regrading is here in this grade out section. So that was necessary in order to transition from the new crossing grades that we needed down back into Waterfield Road. And this is very tricky grading here. As far as the ADA goes, we always try to meet ADA requirements. Every time, it doesn't meet ADA as is, but when we touch it and reconstruct it, we do everything that we can to make sure that it does meet ADA, and where we can, we will. So that was the premise that we went on for this. We couldn't have a 7% cross slope across this crossing here. And that's where this whole regrading came in for this section of Waterfield. And the granite bench question. So that was, there's a patisserie here. There are a couple other restaurants. It's just, sit down and have a cup of coffee kind of thing. It's not I'm sure it's not going to be someone sitting there all day, but it was also meant to keep people from walking through there, which I don't, once this is planted, no one's going to want to do that. It's quite steep from, back from the sidewalk edge to this area. So, and of course the plantings that we've chosen are appropriate for that environment. Other questions that you had? I think a lot of the design was based, especially on those two corners on Church and Waterfield, based on just working with the grades and drainage, because there was a big drainage concern. All of the water from basically, this edge is going this way and it drains down Waterfield. So we couldn't have it draining into these buildings. They're already really low here.
Is there a catch basin there?
There's one right here.
Right.
Catch basin there. There's a catch basin here.
So.
And it was a tricky design.
Does the catch basin not work now?
And just getting this to drain positively from the building across the, out towards the planting area. So it was a lot of back and forth with the drainage design in this area.
So the drainage doesn't work presently? Is that
It does, but your curb now is out here. So this is really high. The center of the roadway is much higher than the edge of this building.
So you're bringing water into that plant bed in there? Is that going to, not going to be as much a problem? I mean,
Yeah.
can it take all that much water in there? I
Yeah.
mean, isn't the catch basin going to?
Yep. Catch basin will catch a lot of this water. The planting area will catch the sidewalk and anything that's, you know, falls in the planting area. But there's like a you know, by the time you have the curb, top of curb out here, it's over a foot difference in grade. Though you want to maintain the sidewalk cross slope all the way around to at least to this crossing.
But just to be clear, there's curbing all along the street edge of that planting area, so the roadway is not draining into that planting area. That's draining to the catch basin that will be slightly relocated as part of the project. As Karen said, it's just that piece of sidewalk from Studio and the Common towards the road that drains into that small planting area.
Well, that's what it's doing now, isn't it?
So right now they can positively drain it away. Yeah.
The same way.
It's just a
right, but we're raising this whole. There's new curbing all along the outside edge of this planting area. So whereas the curbing right now is where you see the edge of basically where you see the edge of the red brick, we're raising the grade there. So yeah, this is a better. So you can see this the elevation of the street is much higher. If we hadn't done something here, that street drainage would just be flowing towards the building.
So one question I have, this is Sally, is looking at this tree, which is going to be a replacement tree. You're going to actually have to take down and replace the tree that's on the corner, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And does this cross section meet Winchester's best management practices to date for trees surviving on our streets?
Well, it will certainly be happier here than in the sidewalks. That's for sure.
Yes.
Has a lot more growing area. And this tree really, I mean, you had very little space to pass on this sidewalk.
Yes, I know. That's very tight.
Yeah. So it was also heaving up the sidewalk, and talked to one of the I don't know if he was an owner or just one of the merchants in this building who complained about it heaving at his door. So
incompatible with elder walkers. One question I have is where in this diagram where the tree comes down to the surface dirt, above and to the left of the tree, is that a rock?
No, that's a shrub.
Shrub. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep.
So
yeah. And then these are segments of granite.
Yeah, they're like salvaged granite.
Yep.
Chunks, right.
And there'll be a flushed granite curb all along the edge just to make sure the brick, you know, and the edge are tight there.
Yeah, stable.
Yeah.
Cool.
So the pedestrian desire lines across the grass through the intersection, no one goes up to the corner and makes a hard 90 degrees. Yeah, through there. That's not going to happen. Aren't they going to cut the corners off of that green area?
This is curbing because of the grading. So this is edged with.
Oh, that's awful.
Why?
Because I'm going to trip on that.
Well, I
don't know, honey.
Why isn't it, you put a radius in there or something?
You can't, I mean, it actually, I wish you could spend all of the time that we spent on trying to grade this thing out.
Yes,
But
I was going to say, we have to be mindful of the time too.
Yeah, I know, but these are things that do need to be brought up, even though you might have thought about it as a group think in your office. It might be worth identifying, because it does appear that someone is just going to walk across that, even if it is a curb there, someone's going to step up. It's the shortest distance between one place and another. And it's going to be, I mean, that and the plant material in there, I just don't see it being maintained. I mean, it's too difficult for the.
The DPW will be maintaining these beds. Is that right, Beth?
So I can't speak for DPW, but I assume that's the case unless they are able to find somebody who does like an adopt a island or something.
Right. So
Yes.
my experience,
I was thinking that the merchants, the business owners around here might be interested in adopting this.
absolutely.
Yeah.
My experience with right angles like that on plant beds where there could be a desire line, and I'm familiar with this at Porter Square, I think, is that a very low black metal post with a nicely painted black chain that loops around that corner is a way of indicating to pedestrians that this is not a place for a desire line. This is a place to stay on the sidewalk. And I don't know how much of that will be a problem, but that's one way to deal with it.
Thank you. That's a good idea. There are a couple other people who would like to weigh in. So looks like Ben Keeler is here from KeyTech. Ben?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, sorry, that's not my background noise, but
Okay.
I'll go very quickly. I know that that we're pressed for time. I do want to say that, obviously we've seen, thank you to Karen and Beth for their work here. I know that they've done a ton, probably more than they wanted, and but we obviously have seen a lot of improvement in the areas that they mentioned as it respects to McCall, Highland and Maine and others in terms of reducing the breadth. So, overall, this is a benefit from a safety perspective. And obviously, speaking on behalf of TTAC, I mean, one of our regular concerns is obviously for helping to support multimodal transportation. And so it's nice to see the accommodation of, even while it might not be, complete bike lanes because of, how tight this intersection is. The accommodation for bikes here is fantastic, and so we appreciate that. Last thing I'll just note is, Karen, would you mind just backing up to probably your first slide? I think it was the picture of the existing conditions, or maybe it was one of the first ones that you started with. Yeah, actually go down one. So, you had mentioned the fact that as a temporary fix, or at least to help alleviate the situation while we were working through construction and design, is that we painted that crosswalk red to help with visibility. As part of the downtown improvement plan, broader planning, I mean, I think what we had talked about before when we were at the 25% design hearing and we provided comment was just whatever we do here, we want to use as an opportunity to, create a template that we'll use elsewhere in downtown. There's a number of areas, especially around the Rotary, in other words, that would also benefit from, higher visibility markings as it relates to the crosswalk. Here it's red. I don't think, we're not going to get too tied up on specifics in terms of aesthetics, but I would say that if we believe that that helps with visibility in this area, in which unfortunately there was a fatality, that we would impress upon the town to look at that as an opportunity to use that. And whatever we do here at this intersection and then elsewhere within downtown, if we believe that putting paint on the ground helps with the overall safety of our residents, well, then let's get a paintbrush and get it done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree. It definitely does help with the people noticing the crosswalk.
I think that's it, but thank you guys very much for the help. We appreciate all the assistance.
Thank you, Ben. I see Jay Gill from the DPW is here. Jay, did you want to weigh in on something? Are you muted?
Can you hear me now, Susan?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, our plans are to have a couple businesses or landscapers adopt the island there. Also, I do like the cement slope. As you know, during the winter, those bricks get really slippery, and that intersection is probably the worst slope, and we have people fall, and so I think using the cement slope is really going to give that roughness to it to make it more safe. Also.
Excellent, thank you. Roger Wilson, also T-Tech, did you want to say something?
Yes, I had thank you, Susan. I had a couple of questions for Karen.
You're muted.
Roger, yeah, you're muted.
So, thank you, Susan. My question is for Karen for trucks headed north coming into the intersection from Church. Can they make that turn into Waterfield without going into the other lane? I've had complaints from people with mid-sized trucks saying that it's difficult to make the turns in some of the places where we've tightened up the turning radius or tightened up the crosswalk distance. I'm saying.
These box trucks, you're talking about this direction?
Yeah.
Coming down here, yeah. Yeah, they can make, there's a tiny bit of encroachment here, but that's a turn that they can make, and also going the other direction.
Okay, so they do end up poking a little bit into the other lane on that corner. Yeah. Okay.
Mostly before the stop bar. There's still space in here. If there was a car sticking out here, there's still space there.
Yeah. So it's tight, but we're trying to make this tight.
Right.
We're trying to make it. We want everybody to be as nervous as the pedestrians in these situations. And the second question pertains to the tree planting. Will that obscure somebody is standing at the crosswalk, crossing from that same corner that you've got the pointer?
Yeah.
Is that tree a good idea, given that it might obscure somebody standing at the crosswalk?
So the tree is about here, almost opposite where the existing tree is. And because of the bike lane, your vehicles are way out here.
Okay.
So they won't, to make that turn, that won't be in the way.
Okay.
We did make sure that was.
Appreciate that. And then to the other questioner's issue with the Desire line, you focused on crossing Church, but the crossing, if you're coming up Waterfield on either side and seeking to cross at that corner to the other side of Waterfield, wouldn't a pedestrian want to walk across the grass in the way that you've depicted it now?
So on the common side, if you're walking here?
Yeah, on both sides, you got a right angle for the pedestrian.
Right. And that was necessary. This is a sort of a retained ramp here. The flares weren't going to work in this situation. So there is a curb along the edge of these ramp sides.
Okay.
So I guess people can jump over here if they
yeah.
But I don't know how to, I don't think it's going to be
I think with the curb, as Karen's of the curbing sort of on either side of the ramp, I think that makes it less likely for people to walk across the grass in that area.
Yeah.
Okay. And does it, and that's, has the snow clearing been considered in that design? With
Well, I think that, you know, however they're clearing snow now, but this, I would not think they would want to pile snow here, because it would obscure anyone on the sidewalk.
Okay. Yeah, maybe that's something for Jay to
Yeah.
take a close look at. Okay, that's it for me. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Roger. I don't see any other raised hands. Oh, that's only Roger. Okay, Roger, thank you. So I'm gonna close the public hearing. And I'm just gonna ask Beth and Lisa, are you looking for the board to vote on this?
Yeah, I think it would be nice to memorialize it in a vote so that we are comfortable, you know, before town meeting, that the board endorsed the plan and
Right.
going forward with the funding request.
The final design and the funding request for $440,000.
Right.
So I move that we endorse the design as presented today for the Church and Waterfield intersection and the budget request at town meeting.
Second.
We'll take a roll call vote. Amy,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Mariano,
Yes.
and yes for me.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Exciting.
Karen.
Yeah, it's a great project. We're happy to be moving forward with it. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Beth.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice night.
Thanks. So I'm going to go into our second public hearing on there's a grant of location. Is there someone here from Eversource?
Yes, I believe Jackie Duffy's here from Eversource.
Oh, okay.
I'm happy to just kind of quickly.
Thank you.
So we have a grant location petition in front of us from Eversource to install one new jointly owned pole on Swanton Street and to relocate a second pole on Swanton Street at the Aboriginal River crossing. The work is required as part of the town's flood mitigation project at the bridge. We wholeheartedly support and are thankful for Eversource for doing this work in a timely manner. So engineering and DPW are fully supportive of the project. Thank you.
So I'll open the, go ahead. I was going to open the public hearing.
Yeah, I have a question. Sorry.
Oh, you have a question. All right, from the board.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why is there a specification that the conduit has to be done by excavation and not tunneling? Why are we not leaving that up to Eversource to decide?
So that's a standard provision that's been in our, I think it's in our kind of standard letter.
Okay.
Ever since I was town engineer, I think there's some problems in the past where they've used a tunneling equipment and has caused issues. It can kind of go through things if you don't know that there's other utilities underground and cause other issues. So that's been our standard. I don't know if Jay wants to make any comment about that, but that's been our standard in terms of requiring open excavation. In this case, there's actually not any conduit being installed. It's just new poles with overhead wire.
Okay, that's fine.
If I may, what happens is to be a void, and sometimes would have sinkholes because it wasn't compacted properly when you tunnel. So that's why the reason we asked for that.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else on the board? No? So I'll open it up to the public. Is Jacqueline from Eversource?
Yes.
Yes, I'm here. Once we get the street opening approved by the DPW, we can have the poles done in 2 days.
That's exciting news.
Yes.
That's quick. That's good. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Yeah, I move that we approve the grant of location to Eversource to install one pole on Swanton Street and the relocation of one additional pole on Swanton Street. The improvements are necessary to support the town's flood mitigation project at the Swanton Street Bridge.
Second.
So roll call vote. Amy
Yes.
and Rich
Yes.
and Mike
Yes.
and Mariano.
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a nice night.
So moving along, I guess we'll go back up to acceptance of donations really quick, if that's okay.
Okay, I move that we accept donations in the amount of $2,265 from Philip and Elizabeth Koss, Law Office, David Baker, NRP Management, WTA, B&A Maintenance, Paul and Pamela DeLuca, Ann and Joseph Foley, Margaret Labeds, Menpa, Michael Cucuriello, Douglas and Patricia Wilkinson, Fred Kimon for the Public Safety Memorial, with many thanks to all who donated, and with my apologies for any mispronounced names there.
Second.
Roll call vote. Amy,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Mariano,
Yes.
and yes for me.
I move that we accept FY21 firefighter safety equipment grant in the amount of $14,400 to the Winchester Fire Department to be used to purchase a turnout gear washer extractor.
Second.
That's excellent. So roll call vote. Amy,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Mariano,
Yes.
and yes for me. Motion carries. Quickly, the town manager's report. Or you said, actually, Lisa, you said you would defer, so we'll keep moving through the items where there are people waiting. The Climate Action Committee has a proposed heat statement for us. Is Ruth there? Yep, I see Ruth.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name's Ruth Tremarky. I'm the chair of the Climate Action Advisory Committee, and I'm here tonight to talk to you about heat and drought. In February, we gave the board the background of why this is an issue for Winchester now, and we said we would be back with an ask. So the ask is in your hands now. It's a heat statement. We're now asking the board to adopt this evening. The statement was developed by CAAC and has now been endorsed by our fire chief, the director of public health, and all of the members of the Board of Health. The statement calls for a set of actions spread among town staff, volunteer committees and boards, and hopefully members of the public to also engage in. The goal of the actions is to move Winchester into alignment with our neighboring municipalities in terms of greater preparedness for high heat days and the attendant drought it brings due to climate change. It's notable that our town engineer, town planner, and fire chief agreed last week to move heat and drought upward in their matrix for the All Hazards Mitigation Plan 5-year update in terms of increased frequency and intensity. Our public library director and our executive director of the Council on Aging have also expressed support for the need to communicate heat risks to the public and strategies to reduce risks to public health. So there's a lot of support from different angles for this heat statement. Lastly, I'd like to note that the Climate Action Advisory Committee has, over the past 5 years, supported the town in applying for, and in some cases entirely written, over $340,000 in climate grants. And as of now, the town has landed $77,000 with $120,000 still outstanding. This is just to give you a sense that yes, we would like to also apply for grants that are now heat related. Specifically, there's an MVP action grant, that's Municipal Vulnerabilities Preparedness Action Grant, that we could apply for to help support some of the actions that the heat statement calls for. And we'd also like to help promote the Massachusetts SAVE grants for air source heat pumps, which are both heating and cooling units. I'd like to give credit to Jared Huffman, who's an intern Lisa Wong arranged for, to work with the Climate Action Advisory Committee in completing his Master's in Public Health degree for the past 4 months. and to Ken Pruitt, one of the architects of the CAP and current CAAC Resiliency Project member. And both of their work has helped to develop and shape this heat statement. So that's it. I thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions that the board may have at this time.
Thank you, Ruth. This is very thorough, and it's obvious a lot of thought and research has gone into it. So thank you for putting it together. Anyone on the board have any questions or comments?
Just thank you, Ruth, and everybody else who worked on putting it together. It's very important.
Thank you.
I guess I just have one quick question. Ruth,
Yep.
do you envision a time frame for working on the action items in this statement?
Well, the sooner the better. The summer is coming. The hot months are coming. The first thing we'd really like to see the town focus on is a public relations campaign. And we spoke to the Board of Health and to Jen Murphy about those aspects. So that particular piece we'd like to see, and the fire department as well, Chief. That should happen this spring and leading into the hot months. More complex pieces certainly would be much longer range. Looking at cooling centers, identifying them is easy. We don't know the extent to which they'd be needed. And some of the other more complex things, getting generators if needed for public buildings to ensure that during heat waves, when the grid is under high demand, that the town has we already have a generator, for instance, at the high school, and of course the hospital has theirs. But to determine those longer range things, I think we're looking at years going into the future to completely fulfill all actions on this statement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would also think that compiling a list of people who are, recruiting people, reaching out to people who want to be on a list to be, notified and checked in on, I think is a great idea and would be a high priority item.
Absolutely. And Philip Belts has already done considerable work on that. And he has a working database that either he and in some cases the police or DPW, I guess, even in cold months, will check on some of our seniors and vulnerable citizens. And he would like to expand that. That's part of the communications that the climate team is calling for, greater enhanced communications all around.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Lisa, I'm sorry to put you on the spot here, but I know a lot of this will probably bring about some coordination and some work on your end. So I just wanted to check in with you and see if you had any questions or thoughts on this statement before we vote for it.
So Ruth has actually been advocating for us to have a more robust heat response for quite some time. I know we've discussed this very issue at several department head meetings. So we are prepared to, elevate our response. And we had actually wanted to do that starting with last summer, but COVID changed
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I move that the town adopt the heat statement as presented by the Winchester Climate Action Advisory Committee that has also been endorsed by the Board of Health, the Health Department, and the Fire Department.
Second.
So roll call vote. Amy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. Thank you very much. This is really good.
Thank you so much to the board. Good night.
I don't know if I mentioned that the business item number 1 about the Verizon renewal cable TV license is going to be postponed. So I'd like to move into the appointments, which is number 13. I know we have some people waiting in the wings for this. I think the first one is the Committee on Names. I don't know if John McConnell is here, but he's currently a member and just seeking to be reappointed for another term.
So, yeah, I don't think he's here.
Yeah, I don't see him here either.
Yeah, but since it's a reappointment, if I'll make the motion that we reappoint John McConnell to the Committee on Names to a term to expire March 31st, 2022.
Second.
So roll call vote. Amy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that brings us to the Local Historic District Study Committee. This is a independent, newer committee just to study and look at a historic district in the vicinity of Grove Street. And I know that Jacques Leménager who is on the Historical Commission, has been sort of the leader trying to pull this together. And so he's seeking to be appointed as the representative on this committee for the Historical Commission. I don't know if you want to
do you want to do the
anything, but
three?
I was just going to get him appointed first because I think he might be helpful.
Okay, so I'll move that we appoint Jacques Leménager from the Historical Commission to the Local Historic District Study Committee.
Second.
So roll call vote. Amy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So it's unanimous. And then we do have 3 licensed architects who are seeking to be appointed to this committee. I think that's kind of an embarrassment of riches. It's really great to have 3 very well qualified architects interested in this position. And I just wanted to, at the outset, say clearly we cannot appoint all 3. And I would say to the people who are here right now that we thank you very much, and we're very happy to have you interested in volunteering for the town. And if you're not chosen for this particular committee, we encourage you to keep in touch and apply for other positions as they come up on other boards and committees. Like I can think of several where a design background or experience with complex projects and complex budgeting for those projects would be an enormous asset. The design review committee, zoning board of appeals, either as a full member or an alternate. Housing partnership board is focused on affordable housing, and design review. Maybe I said that already. There are a number of committees that we, an architect would really be an asset. So please volunteer. Winchester runs on volunteers. So I'd like to open it up to the interviews and start with Ms. And I apologize in advance for mispronouncing your name. I'm going to try and say Isigil Vilcek, who is an architect. We have your materials, and thank you very much. It sounds like you have a great background in historical preservation. So if you could just tell us a little bit about why you're interested in this particular study committee.
So Susan, I only see one of the 3 architects.
Oh, I thought I saw it before.
And it's Richard Leaf is here. I did not see the other 2.
Okay. I thought I saw that. All right. So I guess we'll move to Richard Leaf.
Am I unmuted?
You are unmuted, sir.
Excellent. Thank you all for all the time you're putting in, even on an evening like tonight. So I'm just going to try to give you a 2-minute summary of myself experience in Winchester. As some of you know me from some of the other work that we've done in town, we live at 5 Winslow Road, which is by Ginn Field, which is about 3 minutes away from the LHD that's being talked about. My wife, Carolyn, and I have actually lived in Winchester since 1991, for 30 years now. And our 2 children, aged 24 and 29, went through the local schools. So Carolyn and I met actually in 1986. working for a museum design firm in Boston, and worked there many years and worked on some really interesting projects. One of them was the renovation and restoration of the Cincinnati Union Terminal train station, which was a 1930s Art Deco train station. And we turned it into a museum center. I'm going back a long time ago. But Carolyn and I started Leaf Design, our practice, in the mid-1990s. And in the same way that our old firm in Boston specialized in museums, we decided basically to specialize in old homes. So we've been doing basically additions and renovations to older homes in the Boston suburbs, but I'd say about 2/3 of our work is in Winchester. And at this point, we've probably designed somewhere between 200 and 250 completed projects in town, many of them in the flats, many of them throughout town on all sides and all ends of Winchester. And many of them actually have required special permit zoning approval. So I'm very familiar with the concerns of the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Board, and certainly the Historic Commission. And on kind of a more personal note, my wife and I basically moved to Winchester 30 years ago, partly because of the proximity to Boston and the trains and the reputation of the schools. But primarily as architects, we loved the architectural legacy and the homes in the town. We just loved the architecture. So that's actually why we moved to town. And to some degree, I think the mission of our practice has been trying to preserve old homes. And so we've tried to put ourselves on the side of renovating and adding to in sensitive and modest ways for hopefully all of our projects. I think with the underlying mission that if we do these projects, it stops houses from being torn down. So this is both an interest of ours, but I think it's really kind of a work passion of ours to be on this side of things. So very much hope that you'll consider my appointment to this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Anyone on the board have any questions? I guess not. So I don't see anyone else actually here. I'm sorry we went over time on the earlier part of our meeting, but it would be nice to get this study committee together and off the ground. So I would entertain a motion to appoint Mr. Leaf.
Yeah, I move that we appoint Richard Leaf to the architect position in the local historic district study committee.
Second.
Roll call vote. Amy.
Yeah, can I just ask, were the others informed of the meeting tonight? I just want to make sure that we're not being premature.
I believe so.
Okay. I mean, Richard is incredibly qualified, so I'm happy to vote. I just want to make sure that everyone was given a chance to speak. So, but I'll vote yes.
We can always invite them to another meeting also, again, to make sure. I can reach out to them again.
I think Jack and I certainly feel the same way. The more the merrier. So if the other two candidates miss the meeting somehow and you want to appoint a second architect, I would certainly be happy to have a fellow architect. There's no monopoly on this effort. So
I would concur with Richard. This is Jack Lemenager.
Right.
Okay.
And I also know that Brian Zucchelli is in support of that notion as well.
Yeah, and you can have up to 7 members on this committee, so that's
correct.
No problem doing that. That's very gracious. Sounds good. So we're voting, right? So Rich.
Yeah, I voted yes.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Mariano.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
Okay, I move that we appoint Tom Savigny to the Historical Society position in the local historic district study committee.
Second.
Roll call vote. Amy.
Yes.
Rich.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Mariano,
Yes.
and yes for me as well, so that carries as well.
And I move that we appoint Brian Sikeli to the town staff position in the Local Historic District Study Committee.
Second.
Second,
Roll call vote, Amy,
yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and Mariano,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well.
I move that we reappoint Roger Wilson to the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Committee to a new term to expire March 31st, 2024.
Second,
Roll call vote, Amy,
yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Mariano,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well.
Susan, excuse me. This is Jack
Yes.
again.
Yes, Jack.
Thank you for your for your support for this study committee. All right, just to keep you abreast, our next step is to meet with staff from the Massachusetts Historical Commission. I reached out to Chris Skelly today, anticipating your vote tonight, and that's how the process gets started. So we will keep you in the loop through Lisa, if you prefer, or however, or a note to all of you as we progress. So thank you for your vote
Okay.
of confidence.
Thank you. Yes. Keep us in the loop. We're very concerned that this is a good thing.
Good. I agree.
So why don't we go back to the controller's salary budget, controller's office FY22 salary budget. I think Stacy was waiting for us to do this. And she's here. Lisa, did you want to lead this off, or?
No, just that Stacy, if you want to report anything from the comptroller's report as well. But Stacy and I have been in discussions about a number of different things. First is we had actually put in a new position in her budget for fiscal year 20. I can't remember which one it was.
21. 21.
Right.
Seems like 5 years ago. And we took it out voluntarily due to COVID. So this is a position that we believe the work in her office justifies. However, now that we have CARES and CDBG dollars and $6.6 million in federal stimulus funds, funding that goes through December 2024, we don't have the internal capacity to manage these funds. So the comptroller's office is the best place for that management of those funds. I know Stacy's been working a lot of extra hours for CARES funding, but if we're adding other layers of grant funding, then this becomes a pretty big task. So Stacy can explain it more, but we've been talking internally about this being a tactic for the response for federal stimulus. We had conversations with FinCom even before we developed the proposal, and we've also gone to personnel board, but Stacy can give you an update.
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, I know that I always bring up how overworked we are and I always vent about it. And I believe some of you had stressed your support for a new position when and if we're able to do it. And I did go to personnel board. I wrote up a job description. It really sort of balances our rules and responsibilities a little bit more. I push some things down to Mike. He pushes some things down to hopefully this new position. And the roles are balanced a bit more. Like I'm not, or Mike's not posting cash receipts, which is not really the most useful. It's not the best use of his time. So hopefully with this new position and with the federal money coming in, Mike and I can take control of that, and we can get more things done that we don't do. We're constantly on the go. We're doing warrants every single week for bills, for payroll. So it's just a constant cycle. There's not a lot of extra time to get extra things done. And this position not only helps us be flexible and responsive for the federal money that's coming in, but also for all the other special things that hit our desks. There's lots of things that hit our desks and we have to react. And this will just make us a little bit more flexible. And I went to the personnel board, drew up a job description, and they accepted the position at their meeting last week. And FinCom also accepted the position in the budget last week as well. So I do have their support. So hopefully I still have your support for a new position, and that's really all I'm here for. It's not really usual that I come to you with the details about the comptroller's budget, salary budget, expense budget, but this instance is because there's a new position in there, and I just wanted to let you all know that that's the proposal, and I hope I still have your support.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, it's good to understand it thoroughly, and that's what your memo, I guess, last time or two times ago, really did for us. So yes, I mean, it makes total sense to me. Anyone else on the board have any questions for Stacy or any comments?
Just want to say thanks, Stacy, for keep pushing this forward and being willing to hold off on the position from last year's budget, because I know we've been waiting to fill this for a while, because even without the COVID expenses and the federal stimulus and all the processing of that, this position was still something that we've been needing to fill for a long time. And your department's been running on fumes, and so it's a necessary one, and certainly support it, and thank you for your continued work.
I've been talking about it for a long time, and last year I finally put it forward, and then COVID hit. So it's like, oh no, just when I thought I had it all wrapped up and ready to go.
Right.
So this year I know there are a lot of other requests on the table, and everybody wants, there are other things out there, and everybody wants or is fighting for resources. I just hope that this can be part of the town meeting approvals this year. So we'll see what happens.
So if there's nothing else, I was going to say it would be great if we could vote to support this.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, absolutely, the office needs the additional help, and hopefully this will mean also that you'll be able to take some of your accrued vacation time.
We'll see.
Yeah. But yeah, so I move that the board support the request from the controller to support the new position and the funding at town meeting.
Second.
So roll call vote. Amy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So it carries. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Did any of you guys have a question on this beautiful report for February?
I was going to get to that. I'm just going to work
okay.
upwards on the, but yes, I was looking for good news in it, and it sounds like the building permit revenue is doing well, which is consistent with all of the building that I see around me. So that's good.
Yeah, the local receipts tend to like level off. In January, I was a little bit skeptical, but then it seemed like they caught up. It could have just been a lot of timing differences, but we'll see how March pans out. I'll do a big comptroller report for town meeting, and in there will be a budget to actual for the general fund and water, sewer, and rec, and a bunch of other funds.
Right. Anybody else?
Just saw your notes in there about the transfer station permits and kind of a shift towards more smart permits, which is, it's good in a way and something that we've been kind of trying to build for the past several years. But in another way, it's as costs have gone up and the benefits of recycling have kind of decreased on the financial side, it's going to impact our bottom line, which is helpful for context for our discussion of the transfer station and future permit costs. So it's interesting to see that. I wish that increase had come a few years back when we were really putting the word out on the SMART program. But it will certainly help us as our decisions are made moving forward.
Is that all part of the transfer station discussion that's happening these days with the costs and generating a new higher fee? Is that all being considered?
It is, yeah. It's a big part of the cost. I mean, essentially, we don't have to get into it now, but yes, it is. Sorry, it's part of the consideration, yeah.
As far as the excise tax, now, does this mean that FY22 we have to budget based on FY21 receipts? Is that right?
Yeah, we've had a discussion with, I think it was Enzo and, maybe not Enzo, but Nicole from FinCom and Haviz from FinCom. I think they're in charge of the revenue. And we did mention to them that we need to drop those, estimates for FY22 for motor vehicle because we are limited to what we've collected this year.
Okay.
And DOR hasn't changed their position on that even with COVID. So, they want conservative as much as possible, as usual. But.
Okay.
Rich, Amy, anything? No.
No, I have nothing. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you guys so much. I appreciate the support as usual.
Thank you, Stacy. So I'd like to move on to the downtown parking discussion. And I think Lisa had some, actually, you have some slides for us or something?
Yeah, actually, sorry, Susan. So we have Michelle Buyback here for non-union compensation, and I know
Okay.
her time is brief.
I apologize. Let's do that.
Great. Okay, so non-union employees are over 1/3 of the workforce. It's nearly 40%. There are 94 full-time employees plus a whole bunch of sort of random part-time employee positions out of about 256 total townside employees. Back in the budget process in mid-February, I submitted a budget that had $275,000 in a line item that was dedicated for unallocated wages. That is meant for looking at the non-unions, looking at other items this year, primarily some reclassifications. There's no collective bargaining agreements in that line item this year because those have all been resolved through the end of fiscal year 22. And then, you might start to see projections in future years as we bargain those. So in developing the specifics for that $275,000 budget, I've been having ongoing conversations with non-union employees about not having all of it be towards COLA. If we look at our personnel policy guide, which is pretty extensive, it covers quite a bit of things. We've been making adjustments to that. There are various components of that haven't changed for quite some time. So I'm just going to go through that in a second. So the total package that we're looking at here for is about 324,000. So 272,000 is that'll come from that $275,000 budget. The remaining portion of that is recreation and the water and sewer enterprises. So we are proposing 3 different components. So one is the COLA, the cost of living increase. The other 2 are a sick leave buyback and adding a step. So I'll go through these one at a time. So when looking at the COLAs.
Sorry, Lisa, sorry. Is there a document that we should be following along with in our package?
Let's see.
Or that you could share.
Yeah, it is in, it's in your email, but here we go. There we go. See a memo? There we go. Okay, so you'll see the numbers 1, 2, and 3. So this is the 3% COLA. The compensation schedules. This refers to those 94 plus those part-time positions. So the compensation schedule will actually show you what those positions are. The one additional step would be added to the professional, technical, and CS schedules. So that's about a 3.5% above the current max. Management, that schedule would be 2.5% above the current max for the next fiscal year. And then the sick leave buyback program, right now it's been $125 a day. That's the lowest among any employees. And that hasn't been, we made a minor adjustment to that, but we'd like to increase that to $150 a day. And then a lot of the union contracts, it equates to a full day's pay per day. I actually like to encourage folks to use this program. The $150 a day is actually significantly less than compensation for employees' daily wage. So just to give you some history, here is a sort of color-coded comparison of the different union contracts. Let me see if I can zoom this in. So if you'll note for the fiscal year 17 to 19 period, it was fairly uniform across the board. Around this time for the fiscal year 2021 and 22, these go in line with the 3-year collective bargaining agreement contracts. There have been some market adjustments for various unions. So you'll certainly see that there are a lot of changes here based on those market adjustments. So the non-union is, I think, still fairly conservative at 3%. And I'll go over why that is in a second. So several years ago, I believe this was before my time. So I believe it was about the 2017, 2018, 2019 time period. I think I came in at the tail end of it. There was a review of non-union salary data, and there was adjustments made based on that review with comparable communities, and the positions were adjusted to just under 90% of the median value of each of these community positions. So this is a lot more difficult to do because pretty much every position in that the non-unions is different. So you literally have to do a comparison of, like Michelle's job would be different than, the person in her office, which would be different from the treasurer's office, and so on and so forth. So it's not necessarily an easy review to do. So as a result of that, there was only a small number of positions that were adjusted to get to that 90% of median value. So there's a couple of things we're looking at from an economic point of view. Looking at the hires that we've made over the past few years, we've noticed that there is a disincentive for union employees to jump into non-union jobs. We found that in some cases, the salary actually decreases. I think the police chief is an obvious one. Certainly, there's less opportunity for overtime, and there's still I think that position is still fairly competitive. But when we're talking about, let's say, a number of the DPW positions, we've had a lot of difficulty hiring into the upper level positions. So we have very qualified W-15, which is the highest union positions, that have not wanted to make the jump into a PT position because of lost wages or losing wages. So we've ended up hiring people into those higher level positions who have less experience and less qualifications than our union positions. In some cases, we've had, for example, a plumber craftsman position. We went out many, many times to advertise that position and only received one applicant for that position. For a number of other positions at town hall, like the treasurer, assistant town engineer, assistant town clerk, we have ended up hiring quality staff, but we tend to hire them at the upper end of the step schedule because we haven't had any major adjustments to the steps in quite some time. I did add one position in the previous year, but we hadn't had any changes to that in quite some time. And this is why I'm looking at an additional step. It also costs money to advertise, to train, to bring people on board. So we think it's a good idea to try to attract and retain high quality staff, to keep them here. And one of the ways to do that is to have competitive wages. There has been some discussion internally about at some point doing another wage adjustment. So we can certainly talk about what that will be and what our targets would be, and find a funding source for that. But in the meantime, we do believe that these adjustments of a 3% COLA, sick leave buyback, which that component is $12,000, and adding a step at the end, and that total is $27,000, and these are all included in that $272,000 is the right step to do for fiscal year 22. Michelle, did I miss anything?
Nope, I think that's it for now. If anyone has questions.
No, just to say thank you for putting this together and for bringing it right in line with what was budgeted as well. So seems like makes sense for us, and especially relative to some of the other increases in the some of the other bargaining units. So I think our non-union is about a third of our workforce. So it's something that needs attention, just like the union positions. So it seems like 3% is pretty modest with one step. So it seems kind of like a lateral move, and probably something that we need to address in the next couple fiscal years as well, to maybe increase beyond that, to continue to recruit for a variety of positions, across the board. So makes sense to me. Certainly seems like it's in line with what we projected and what needs to happen. So thank you for everyone putting it together.
Anybody
Yeah,
else?
I just have a quick question for Michelle and Lisa. What is the average sort of turnover each fiscal year? Do you have those numbers, just as for even a rough estimate?
I feel like that would vary depending on the position or the department. But I have heard that, there is a direct correlation between, adjusting salaries towards the market and being able to recruit and retain quality employees. I've definitely heard that feedback in public safety and public works.
Okay.
Yeah, if we're below the median and it's affecting our retention and recruitment, definitely support it. Have Personnel Board and FinCom looked at this yet?
This was presented to Personnel Board last Wednesday. So we presented these same documents, answered their questions. I believe they're going to be doing all of their votes this Wednesday. Michelle, do you know the status of this in FinCom?
I don't know the status of this at FinCom, but Lisa is correct that the Personnel Board will be voting on Wednesday. They just ran out of time last Wednesday because they had a big meeting.
Now, the Personnel Board, are they looking for support from the Select Board, or should we wait to vote until we know what the motion is going to be from Personnel Board in the warrant?
They were waiting for us, Mariana. I was there the other night too, so they were.
I was gonna say, I'll take Stacy's word. It's always better to have support.
Okay.
in
Yeah.
another meeting.
Okay. So if there are no other comments, or I guess we can make comments after I make the motion, but I move that the board express its support for the non-union compensation for FY22 as presented on this memo to the Personnel Board and for their presentation at town meeting, for their article at town meeting.
So Mike, did you just second? Okay.
I did, yeah, sorry.
All right, so we'll have a roll call vote. Amy?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
And I would say this makes sense to me too. Wish I had taken a closer look at it when it went to the Personnel Board, but I vote yes as well. Okay. So now I think we should go to the downtown parking presentation if possible, because I know there are people here very interested in this.
Okay. All right, there's a number of different topics, so I'm going to sort of go through these as quickly as possible. At a previous meeting, the board voted to give me latitude to change the 15-minute spots, primarily to kind of move them sort of out of town center. So I have a couple of recommendations that I wanted to bring back to you. There are currently 6 total takeout spots. So I'll go through the areas. Below, this is an actual sign that Jay made. So these are waiting to go up as soon as we figure out where they're going to be. You'll kind of see in, very small areas of the photos, the A-frames that are currently existing, not very attractive, and they kind of take up sidewalk space. So, we'd like to kind of install these posts. So on, let's see, actually, sorry, this should be Mount Vernon. So in the middle parking space, you'll see by Lucia's, right against their outdoor dining barrier, there's a takeout space right there. I'd like to recommend moving that to Converse Place. There are actually 3 30-minute spots on that end, and that takeout space is sort of it'll be one that can be used by China Sky and Lucia's, but it moves it out of that 5th spot that's in front of a few storefronts that now don't currently have any parking spots in front of them. Camella's has 2 takeout spots. It's hard to see. It's kind of a bit of a mess down there, but there's at least 3 30-minute spots already. I recommend that we just replace one of those 30-minute spot signs with a 15-minute spot, and sort of keep that as quick turnover here, sort of in front of that UPS truck.
Which is blocking the hydrant, but yes.
Which is, yeah. And then by First House Pub, which I don't have a takeout spot, but there's one by them in Frozen Hoagies that I'd like to recommend taking out. And then potentially moving that over to the bridge area. And then Elaine's has 2 takeout spots. I'd like to replace that with 1, probably put it on that light post. So it's, we don't have those A-frames there. So I don't know if this is more getting feedback from folks versus taking an official vote on these.
Well, I would say I certainly support the sign rather than the sort of temporary folding things that do take up sidewalk space. And also, you're never sure, like, is this for real? Is it all the time? Maybe I'll just park here anyway. It's a lot more, it's a lot clearer to have the sign, the more permanent sign.
Lisa, I'll just ask about Mount Vernon Street, that the one on the corner. Are we sure that's 30 minutes parking over there? I'm just looking at the map right now, and it seems to be an hour on that corner.
Let me see. I'm pretty sure when I took a photo, it was 3 30-minute spots, but
it looks like there's 30-minute parking in front of the bank, at least in the map.
It's 30 minutes on Converse, right? On the side of Scotty Insurance. It's 30 minutes right now there.
Yeah, so I think you can't see it, but I've just blowing up my picture, and it does say 30-minute parking, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. except Sundays.
So instead of the spot on Mount Vernon, which would become a regular parking spot, you would change one of these on Mount Vernon. I mean, you would change one of these on Commerce, sorry.
Yes, and as a side note, there's a new dog groomer's place at 15 Mount Vernon that right now they're unfortunately their storefront is being blocked by the additional outdoor dining space for Lucia's. You know, we're hoping that if they put up a sign, they have some visibility, but they don't have a lot of visibility. So they've been requesting whether they could use some outdoor space for various activities. So they could potentially use that that fifth spot, or they could use one of the spots around the corner on Converse. So I asked them to sort of take a look at our regulations to figure out what makes sense for them, to get back to me this week if possible. So I just wanted some, you know, so some potential flexibility to move things around if I needed to. But anything they do officially would have to come before the select board, so we can also, you know, make changes at that time.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think these look like great recommendations. I don't have any problems with any of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think these are fine for 15-minute spots. They make sense. So I would support them.
And like I said, it's easy for us to change things out. So a lot of this is just trying and seeing if it makes improvements. And certainly if there's any feedback, just let me know. Okay. The Jensen Town Hall lot. So the 10 spaces that are right along the street, that are on the right side of that sort of pedestrian entrance. The board had previously voted to change those to 2-hour downtown parking spaces. Given that, you know, it could be a potential 20 to 30-minute walk, depending on where your downtown destination is, I thought it would make sense to turn that into 3-hour parking or by permit only, which is what the signs in the next 4 rows behind it say, and just sort of have that be consistent. So that would be, you know, that this would require a board vote to change those 10 spaces to match the other signs in that lot behind it.
So the time limit would go up to 3 hours, and it'd be open for consumer parking, not limited to, you know, permits.
Correct. So like everything else, it would be
right.
Adding time, but also being open to permit parking only. Because I also did hear feedback that this is not necessarily in high demand for people to just park for half an hour or 45 minutes, but that we are also looking for places for, let's say, downtown employees to park. So I was thinking that if that makes it a little bit more attractive for them to park, and then they don't mind the 10 to 15-minute walk to work, and then they work, you know, more than 3 hours, that would make sense.
Any thoughts, anyone?
That makes sense.
I mean, they'll match the other ones that are also 3 hours in the same lot, right? So
We want people
makes sense.
downtown for as long as possible, right? So
true.
Yeah, and I think as Lisa said too, you know, a lot of these are going to be kind of evolving over the next several months as, you know, things change in the town center, construction, and everything. So it's good for us to keep our attention on it. You know, we're going to be having our town hall employees returning and more activity at town hall as well. So we'll just, you know, kind of the goalposts will keep moving for us over the next several months. So as long as we keep attention, sounds good to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think being consistent makes sense in this lot.
All right, so I move that we change the 10 spaces that are currently 2-hour parking to move them to 3-hour parking / by permit only spaces.
Second.
A roll call vote. Amy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that carries.
Okay, the Converse Place lot. So the select board had requested that we explore a public-private partnership with the owner of 10 Converse Place for additional parking. I spoke with them several times last week, and Brian and I had a meeting with Ian and his group on Friday. And there's a few things that we discussed. So there were some terms that we discussed that would make sense, which I'll go over in a second. I do want to kind of discuss the timeline. I did put the sort of converting the green space into additional parking on the Conservation Commission agenda for tomorrow night. I also put on their agenda something we'll discuss later, which is potential outdoor dining spaces by the Mill Pond area. So my understanding is that if they are not interested in us moving forward, that project would be very hard to move forward with. So because it's so close to the river, we would need a notice of intent and approval from Concom. So I'll know more tomorrow if this is something that makes sense. So they indicated that I would have to make a very strong case that we would need these additional parking spaces and that there's no other alternative. So I'm working on building that case. We think we can get at least 20 more spaces here. But we've also heard feedback that people don't want to lose all the green space. So it's kind of a happy medium that we'll have to play.
Mhm.
So going back to our discussions with the owner, they are actively pursuing a development on this lot. So in terms of timing, they are more than happy to, as long as we're kind of, probably pushing and paying for a lot of the investigative studies to commit to at least a 1-year agreement with 90-day notice periods after that, rent-free. I think 1 year is all they could commit to. We'll certainly know if they get approvals quickly, if that 1 year can extend longer or not. So we'll need to draw up an official ground lease that specifies the terms and conditions and responsibilities. They would like to limit the existing lot to 20 passes at one time and have that only available on evenings and weekends. There are 27 spaces there, so the office building is still in operations and needs some of those spaces. For the expanded, I should mention they would like to limit this to local merchants and staff. So this would not be kind of a free-for-all parking, but it would be limited to specific individuals. The town will also discuss whether, how exactly we would be laying out the space. So it's likely that we'll use gravel and tire stops. The owner would prefer that the entrance be on Mount Vernon instead of on Converse because it's pretty tight. But I would have to let the experts tell me what makes sense. There is no parking in that section because it's right across the street from the fire station. Talked to the fire chief. He doesn't see any issues because they do have somebody that kind of comes out of the fire truck and stops traffic and makes sure that the trucks can go in and out, especially when they return to the station. So I think the next steps are I'm going to Concom tomorrow night. Hopefully get their blessing. If I'd like to still, at the very least, pursue a public-private partnership for their existing lot, but hopefully we can get 20 or 30 more spaces.
Sounds good to me. Thanks for connecting with the owners of the property. They've been working on the Elmwood project, the Fells Hardwood project, and purchased 10 Converse and have really shown an investment in the community. So it's not something that they need to do, certainly, to help us out. But I think that even if it's staff and store owner parking there, it'll pull some of that parking out of the town center on the streets and give a little bit more breathing room to customers that come in. So sounds great to me. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for Lisa for coordinating all this. Certainly the idea of it being limited to owners and employees would make it, like lower turnover, a little more manageable, and free up the curbside spaces. I'm a little torn about losing all that nice green grass in that photograph, but it's always a balance of what's more important and what's more pressing. And so, yeah, I think this is a good idea. So I'm sorry I interrupted Rich, I think it was.
That's okay, Susan. No, I just agree with everyone's sentiment so far. So thanks, Lisa, for pursuing this.
So you don't need a vote for this one at this juncture. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Sorry, there's a lot. I'm just going to keep moving down.
Yep.
So the board had also requested that we look at signing our lots better, and I think a big blue sign is needed. I just wanted to kind of show you some of these examples to get a sense of what you would prefer. Some are posted on the light post or lamp post so they can be, put on streets, and then others, like this big parking sign. We'd like to actually put like in front of the lots as well. Some, kind of say free on them, which I think is probably a good thing to have, even though it's not all technically free. We'll kind of have to figure out how to sign it appropriately. But I think the whole idea is, how do we have big P's and arrows pointing to the right places?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is absolutely necessary, and will go a long way, hopefully, in helping direct, especially those people who come from out of town and aren't familiar with the center. I think there's so many construction signs downtown at this point. This is obviously something temporary, while construction is ongoing for the next couple of years. So certainly, I think, making sure they're actually readable and big enough would be my priority at this point.
Yeah, I was going to, go ahead.
I was going to say whether you had any thoughts about who to engage in this process. Some will be temporary and some we're looking to be more permanent, right? Like this nice Mundelein sign, I think is a much nicer permanent sign, but just some feedback as to who I could engage. Maybe like, design review or somebody from the chamber.
Yeah, maybe both. One person from chamber and one more design oriented person. Because I can begin to imagine or envision the one at the top, the more permanent one, but that's on the street level, maybe on one of the corners of Thompson Street, sending people down Thompson Street towards the Aberjona lot, and then one in the ground also, or maybe higher up around where the post boxes are, the mailboxes are, to say, you're headed in the right direction, just keep going into Aberjona lot.
Yeah, there's a pretty small one right now at the entrance of the Aberjona lot that I think if you're not looking for it, you're not going to see it. But yeah, I agree with all the other comments. I think on Thompson Street, putting one that says public parking, keep going, one block ahead would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I would just say, I agree. Sorry, Rich, if I'm walking over your comments, but yeah, having some of them be movable, so that Mundelein one is one that I thought was good as well, because we probably are going to be shifting, especially as traffic patterns change from construction over the next few years, but I do like it when it says public parking there, because that kind of suggests that it's going to be kind of low cost to people. That that's kind of my reaction to it, that you're not paying $50 a day there. So I think people from outside of Winchester will appreciate that and seem more accessible, and we'll have to keep moving around a little bit so people aren't going around in circles either, because a lot of them around the common with Laraway Road closed, it's, you know, it's not necessarily intuitive where the parking is, you know, even with some signage. So I know even up by intersection by Vincent Owen, there's a sign that like points to Winchester Hospital, and you know it's technically accurate, I guess, but I don't know if you're going to get there too easily by following that sign. So yeah, it's just the same same remarks, everyone. Appreciate it, and hopefully we can get these going. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think these are desperately needed, you know, forthwith. You know, I was downtown Saturday night, and it was great to see the center full of life. You know, all the restaurants were full inside and outside, and people were walking around. There were lines around, you know, the ice cream places, and it was great. You know, but you know, I think help, you know, guiding people to the center for public parking, you know, sooner rather than later, just because there are people circling around. It's funny, there are residents that only know one way to get places, and they're kind of baffled by, you know, some of the road closures. You know, and I do think, you know, that as Mike points out, they'd have to be movable just given the different changes in traffic patterns. So I wouldn't, you know, I don't think creating the perfect sign is necessary at this point. I just think we need something up there as soon as possible. And I would do Mount Vernon Street, you know, towards the Jenks lot. I would do Waterfield, and certainly Thompson Street. And I agree with Mariano's comments, just that the actual parking sign for the lots are very small. And if you're not looking for them, you'll miss them.
Right.
So thank you.
Okay, so this is my catch-all. I reached out to Spin to see if we could bring them back to town. So all of their Massachusetts communities had suspended their scooter program. So they actually have no current active programs in Winchester. Brookline was kind of the biggest one. In some ways, they were subsidizing the operations in Winchester because they had a large enough staff that they hired to oversee Brookline and a few other communities, that they could just use the same staff to oversee Winchester. We're not big enough to be a standalone self-supporting market. So I think, you know, I'd like to reach out to area towns, especially those that use Spin, to see if they're even thinking about getting the scooters back on their you know, back on their program. It's just they've been so busy with the pandemic response, they haven't gotten around to it yet. I also plan to continue to research other scooter and shared bike programs. It definitely makes sense for us, especially trying to connect Wedgemere to the downtown. You know, perhaps people might be giving up cars if they're working at home more and not seeing that as a necessary expense. So we'd certainly like to have these kinds of programs anyways here. Thompson Street, there's a commercial loading zone that I often see 2 cars. People, you kind of use that that commercial loading zone to run into Starbucks or other places to get a coffee. So they're using it illegally. I'd actually like to survey the businesses that use that commercial loading zone to see if they all fall within similar days and times, and actually provide for that commercial loading zone to be a legal parking option for the other times of day. So right now it's just basically doing that homework and getting feedback. Valet parking, I'd like to explore a valet parking program to take advantage of these lots that we're about to sign, especially during peak periods. So people can't find parking spots on Friday and Saturday nights, for example, but nobody's using the Jenks lot. I mean, can restaurants have valet parking and be able to kind of put a lot of cars there? Or maybe if we have those extra spaces on at 10 Converse Place, you know, we can also use that for valet parking. And that frees up other spaces for, for people to take advantage of those peak hours. Wedgmere and Shannon Beach, we're still pursuing spaces at Shannon Beach for temporary use during the MBTA renovation project. I'd like to say we're making microscopic steps forward. At least everybody knows that this exists. We'll keep pushing DCR and MBTA to get this done, certainly before the major renovation project. Lastly, but not least, is a parking study. A comprehensive study is likely to cost at least $50,000. I think this, at some point, it might be worth it, but there are so many changes over the next 3 to 5 years that it's kind of hard to study what those different responses would be, right? So what do we do until May 31st? What do we do in that time period between the MBTA, that downtime before they take advantage of, or they pursue their 28 to 42 month project? What happens during that time? What happens during the multi-year Waterfield lot renovation, and what happens after that? And those are just some of the various considerations. The parking study that I think we did before is potentially a little bit more straightforward. I think if we wanted to come up with what does the end goal look like, we have some time between now and then. I think our issues now are we're losing parking spaces. So what kind of temporary changes can we make in the meantime to address the parking shortages? So I just want to get your thoughts about whether there's still some strong feelings on doing a more comprehensive parking study, or you're okay with sort of looking at all of these, 6 or 7 or 8 changes at a time, as long as we continue to pursue changes that are in response to the current needs.
I think we need to do both. I know the chamber had requested us to make some kind of immediate changes that we need to respond to. But things are with kids coming back to school and summer changes with kids not being in school. Our parking needs are going to change. We did commit to a larger kind of full-scale parking study as part of the Waterfield lot development. So back when we were engaging that conversation with the chamber. So certainly something that's needed, and certainly something that we committed to, and there'll be money coming to the town from that project as well. That so it makes sense to fund that part as well, even if we've got to kind of do it a little bit in advance. I think we probably need to be looking at parking in the town center every couple months, or at least quarterly, because that's how often things are going to change. So I'm happy to, engage in both the short-term and the long-term studies. So.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Mike. Certainly the chamber has put forth some recommendations that need to be addressed in the short term. I think the idea is that, things are opening up. You can tell just by having a business downtown. Today I got the last spot in Shore Road parking lot, and I was there at 10 a.m., which is, something I haven't seen, in the last year since the pandemic started. So, business is picking up, which is great. Things are reopening, but, I do think we need to look at this quarterly. The goal is that we have something certainly in mind, to deal with outdoor dining now with these incremental changes, and then certainly, in the fall when the train station, undergoes its major renovation, and then certainly a longer term parking study for the aftermath and the development that's planned and the loss of further spaces is certainly appropriate. I think the last parking study that was done was before any of the major restaurants were downtown, which certainly changes the landscape. So I agree with Mike's approach, but I think in the short term, we should respond to the chamber's requests and get some input and have those dealt with in the next several weeks.
Yeah, I think that these are, Lisa, these are great, really thoughtful solutions for the short term. And I think I totally agree with that. I think, couple bi-monthly, quarterly, however we want to look at it, because things are changing so quickly. I think for the larger comprehensive study, I think it makes more sense to me to wait until we know what the landscape's going to look like once the train station's done. I'm not saying we need to wait till that's done to do the study, but just make sure we're at a point where the study can take into account what the landscape will look like and where all the parking will be available in town versus doing something now and then come 2 years later, it's going to be completely different. So that's my only concern, but I think you're right. I'm totally in favor of looking at parking on a very regular basis in the downtown area, because I think even when we get back into the winter months, it'll look different when the restaurants aren't outside anymore. So but I think Lisa, thank you for this. I think this is a really comprehensive, thoughtful approach to the short term, and I think we'll just need to continue to talk about it as time goes on.
So I do see that Ben's hand is up, and actually I kind of had a follow-up question. If we're going to look at this fairly regularly, I've certainly pulled together people to provide input, but nothing very formal. So I'm not sure if, for example, we sort of look at TTAC and say you're going to be traffic, transportation, and parking, or if we pull together another group that makes sense to, to help look at this.
Yeah, so that was going to be my question, Lisa, to you. Certainly I know you've been meeting with the chamber and the businesses and informally soliciting opinions. I know there's TTAC, so how would you like to envision this conversation happening?
I think a more formal group meeting consistently, especially if we're going to look at this every 2 to 3 months, and be, rather responsive. It's certainly good to see if there's an existing infrastructure that we can use, or whether we can just pull together a small group that reports to the select board every quarter.
So my only concern with if we relied on TTAC alone, there's really no business interests represented on that committee at this point. So I don't know if it's possible to add some business interested, or just for this type of discussion to add people to that. But I think that would be an important perspective, obviously, to get in this discussion.
I nominate Rich.
That was quick, Mike.
Yeah, I'm not sure that TTAC is the right place for parking. I mean, it would be all. I think it might be all consuming for them. But I know Ben has his hand raised, so
yeah, I'll just.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I will be very brief given the time. We'd be happy to help participate on a short-term basis. Conditions like you mentioned are going to change quite a bit over the next actively over the next couple of years. And I totally agree with Rich. I do think that we've had some chamber representation as part of the downtown improvement program, and so I know that there's a gentleman, his name escapes me right now, is a jeweler who's been helping out on that, who does have a very vested interest in parking along with others, so he might be a good candidate to tap into. We'd be happy to help. That's the short term. Long term, I would just tell you that the vision, obviously moving beyond just the town center, but also north of the town center and moving up towards North Main. That's obviously something that's going to require planning and a lot of forethought. We have to envision a future that's going to involve a parking structure, not just parking spaces. So to get from here to there, to accommodate greater density of parking in a smaller area footprint is going to require obviously years and years of effort and advocacy, and that's something that TTAC we're very much involved in and want to advocate for. It's the best thing for our businesses, and it's the best. The more parking we can put in centralized control places means there's more space available for residents and otherwise, and better for the town overall. But that's going to take many years to work through, not just planning but capital as well. And so that's definitely on our agenda, and we'd be very happy to help you guys move that forward.
So any thoughts about maybe tabling this discussion and adding it to Thursday's meeting, and I can come up with, potential option of how we structure this?
I think that makes sense. Maybe it's an advisory committee for you, and then you would present, recommendations to the board. I think also I just, on the whole idea of a parking study, that I think one of the basic components you need to have for a parking study is a geographical area. And maybe that might be part of, deciding what the geographical area we want to look at would be a task for this advisory group, as well as working on the, more flexibly addressing needs, and periodically as we go through the summer and next year.
Yeah, I was going to say this, something similar, Susan, to make sure that kind of the charge for this working group is kind of specific to the area that's really kind of impacted from all of the construction that's going on, because I think that's important too. We're not just doing a whole, large area, that it's really very specific, that we can kind of tie to the spaces that are actually lost from the Waterfield development and the MBTA project. So I think that's helpful too. And also we'll maybe if we have a period of time, that's pretty clear as well, so people don't feel like it's just going to be this, working group that goes on forever and ever, because the impacts are in the near future. It may be helpful too, through the engineering department, to provide some historical information on what we've done in the last, 10, 20 years, because we've had several parking studies. We did a study on to see whether we should build a parking garage. We looked at several locations. So we've kind of invested in kind of addressing this problem a lot before the more recent kind of accelerated impact from the project. So might be helpful to have that too.
Yeah, we have some sketches of structure parking at Wedgemere, as well as on the Arizona lot, and even estimated costs, of course. About 3 years, it cost what, 3 years ago? So it would probably be double now.
Double, yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't cost effective for us then, so it certainly isn't now. So
it was somewhere around $20,000 to $25,000 per parking spot. So
yeah. So
yeah, okay. So Lisa, that is a yes for Thursday.
Okay. The next is an outdoor dining / retail application audit. I'm sorry, audit and update.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. So I'm just going to point out that there's no requested votes. So I'm going to go through this quickly and you can ask me questions. So this is a link to the outdoor dining regulations that the select board approved last year. Right now, everyone's got the right insurance except for China Sky, who has not submitted their insurance, and they also haven't set up yet. Also, the governor has waived the requirements to seek ABCC approval to serve outside. I don't know when that's going to change, but it'll probably be a bigger issue next year if that waiver goes away. And then in our outdoor dining regulations, there is this section 5.4b that talks about signing a license agreement prepared by the town council. So I just checked in with town council to see if they can put together a license, and we'll put that together for this year. Another outdoor dining regulation. These are just a couple quick points in terms of taking pictures from the last few days. Pedestrian wheelchair passage. So we do have some concerns in terms of placements of outdoor mats, plantings, furniture, and other fixtures that might be obstructing the accessible path. I haven't necessarily gone out there with a ruler, but we think there might be some issues. And we did send this as a general email to all the restaurants, so hopefully they can check, and we'll go back and look in more detail. Another section of our outdoor dining talks about basically that the select board granting outdoor dining seats does not preclude them from going to get all the other kinds of licenses that they need, including getting permission from or getting approvals from design review committee or applying for a tent permit. So again, we've notified the applicants. Design review has looked at almost all of the applications. So design review reviewed applications on April 7th. It's actually the responsibility of the applicants to consult with design review committee. So Lucia's, the comments were that it was a positive improvement to the site, and there should be flower boxes and some lighting. First House Pub, they wanted to have them break up the long orange barrier wall with trees, or even they had a comment about sort of putting lighting in between, but structurally, we don't want the barrier to be broken up. So we think there's other things that they can do to kind of wrap or make that sort of less orangey. Atovola, kind of similar recommendations, adding some flower boxes, continuing with shared street art installation. And they still need to review China Sky, The Spot, and Black Horse. These are recommendations from the Mass Architectural Access Board and ADA. We have some concerns that accessible routes to the seating areas have not been observed. So we'll have to work with the applicants on that. And then also at least 5%, but not less than one of the tables needs to be accessible and on that accessible route. Specifically say that it has to be movable and not fixed to a table like a picnic bench or school cafeteria table. Again, we did not observe those accessible routes. And in some cases, we did not observe accessible tables. So we've notified the applicants and we will work with them on that. An update on a couple of restaurants. So Lucia's, we received a few calls about this. They're using the same parking spaces as they did last year. 15 Mount Vernon Street, which is that blank storefront, that was vacant last year and made sense. This year, there is actually a new business that's moving into that storefront location. So the building commissioner and I discussed the tent permit being on the 3 spaces that are in front of Lucia's and not being in this 4 spot, because we do think that that will block the signage on for that dog grooming place. And I've also reached out to that business owner and we've discussed ways to increase their visibility, such as potentially using a space to expand their outdoor retail footprint. Black Horse, the select board wanted to make sure that there was no obstruction of the sidewalk. So here's a picture. The sidewalk is not currently obstructed, but you can see there's only picnic tables. So we have to work with them on making sure that at least one of the tables is accessible. The spot was approved for 2 spaces on Thompson Street. They've actually since put up 2 tents. And they've also put up a new outdoor speaker. The select board had asked me to look at whether they could add tables to the alleyway or along the river instead of using these spaces. So a bunch of staff, DPW, engineering, Conscom, we all went out to the site. We met with various members of the management team of the spot. I reached out to the owner of the restaurant to discuss this, and we were trying to work out whether they could do that. The engineering department actually came back with an 8-page report, kind of laying out possible scenarios for the spaces. There's a lot of different issues with moving their dining tables to the riverside. One was Concom, and I'm going before them tomorrow night to kind of discuss that. The second was just how far those tables would be from the restaurant, from the kitchen, also from the staff being able to monitor those tables. in order to get at least those 3 tables relocated there, it would have to be on both the riverside and on the other side. So it would kind of block that private walkway or that alleyway position. And then you'd have people kind of weaving through there. It's not as well lighted. And, there's a couple concerns about, what it would look like at night. There are critters by the river that need to be discussed. There is also a lot of, there are people that kind of use that back alleyway for smoking or other purposes. So there's kind of a number of small and some bigger challenges that need to be overcome. At this point in time, they would very much like to still keep those 2 spots. We're going to continue the conversation about the feasibility of additional spots by the river, but at this time, they've requested to keep their 2 spots. Any questions?
Just on that, Lisa. So, it looks like they've got 3 tables of 3 in those 2 spots, so 9 dining seats. In terms of the actual courtyard that they have, where they already have, I think 6 or 7 outdoor tables in their patio. Was there any discussion in your walkabout to relocate those tables, within that courtyard? I know that's, the landlord's property and obviously it's outside their lease, but has there been any, has that come up at all?
Yes. So my understanding from the owner of the restaurant is that the landlord is not amenable to that at this time because of liability issues. So I know we had tried that last year. The landlord did not allow it. And that's my understanding, is that there's still liability issues that they're concerned about.
I still look at the spots, outdoor dining on Thompson Street, and I just don't understand. I mean, I think that, unfortunately for them, they were kind of ahead of the curve and invested a lot in outdoor dining. And they have that space out there. I think that it'll be more useful to them, as kind of the dining restrictions are relieved a little bit. But, for how narrow the crosswalks are there, for that being kind of mid-block where people are kind of live parking, and it just doesn't seem to make any sense to me. And I feel bad that they are not in a position where, as a restaurant, where they directly abut a street where, we can provide that outdoor dining. But it seems to me that taking up that space and having those barriers there, it seems like a really bad outcome. So I just can't imagine it staying like that for very long. I mean, it's frustrating to actually see it there. And even since the summer, the way that I typically see it is empty. So it doesn't seem desirable for residents to use it. And I don't know, I can't, especially that many of the retailers have asked for Thompson Street to, have as much parking as possible. For us to take up those spaces seems like a bad idea. But, I'm not sure what the rest of the board thinks.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree, Mike. I weigh the harms here, to see, 3 tables, 3 seats at each table, 9 diners. I just think with their outdoor dining, they are ahead of the curve. Certainly the tables are spaced out now, and I think they have 6 or 7 there. Certainly those restrictions hopefully will ease over time. And, I just think they have better use for outdoor dining, whereas these other restaurants just didn't have anything. So I do think it's awkward. It really, I was on Thompson Street today. It's a tough street to navigate right now, especially if you have a truck in that loading zone. So, personally, I don't see it as a fit. And the tents that they put up as well, sort of obstruct the sidewalk as well. It does get very narrow in that area. So it's a tough area.
I mean,
Well, go ahead, Mario.
I don't like the tent that they have. It doesn't look good. It breaks up the street. So I'm not sure why they need to have the tent. But from the standpoint of it's 2 parking spots, whereas the Black Horse has a lot more parking spots that we've given them, and so does First House. So and it 2 parking spots is like 1% of the parking spots that are in that area. So if it brings more people to the town center, when I have to weigh the giving up 1% of parking spots to have the residents be able to have outdoor dining versus not, I fall on the side of letting the residents have outdoor dining, and bringing more people to the town center. But the tent is just, it breaks up the visual too much as people are driving down Thompson Street. So I would say the tent would have to go if possible.
Did they get a permit for the tent, Lisa?
They applied for one, and I don't think the building department has processed it yet. So I'll check first thing tomorrow. But is the feedback that you don't like a tent, or you want a different kind of structure?
I mean, I think a structure there, it breaks up the view too much as people are driving down. And if you look at the other, Black Horse doesn't have a tent or any sort of structure there. And Thompson Street is not that wide, so it just obstructs the view as people are trying to go down the street too much. I mean, if they want to put umbrellas on the tables or something like that for inclement weather, that's one thing. But a big tent like that on Mount Vernon, what Lucia's is doing is first, Mount Vernon is a much wider street, so it doesn't, it's not this tunnel like Thompson Street is, and it's also a lot better looking what they're building. So I'm okay with what Lucia's is doing, but I don't think Thompson Street is the right place for a tent like that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the tent is kind of just out of scale for Thompson Street because Thompson Street is so narrow, just visually. But I think in a way, I was anticipating something similar to last summer, and they did have some tables out there last summer, and we did approve their 2 spots already. So, I'm glad Lisa and they are willing to keep working on, some alternatives in the patio area, and maybe if the restrictions change and you could have more tables in the space that they have, that would be something to explore. But last summer that Thompson Street was closed and people hated it. That didn't work. We're not doing that again. And I go to Davis Square and other places where there's it looks congested, but it does work, especially in a street where people go very slowly, and Thompson Street is one of those streets. So I think we have to be flexible here.
So they did have a tent last. I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Lisa.
I was just going to say they did have a tent last year. They applied for a permit and were granted one.
Yeah, I think, last summer was a little bit different. We were, had no idea what we were doing. So it was, I think we've got a little bit of knowledge under our belt of what works and what doesn't. And I think it's a question for us too, is how do we build in capacity for this long term? Because, we've heard a lot of complaints from residents and other stakeholders about some of the aesthetics of these barriers and everything. And to Mariano's point, what they did in front of Lucia's, I think looks great. And I think even what Tavola had done last year with putting, a lot of plantings around and everything, it can kind of dress up some of those concrete barriers that make it look like a construction site. But the long-term outdoor dining project, it needs to look better if it's going to be kind of semi-permanent for that many months of the year. But that comes at a huge cost at a time where restaurants are, and businesses don't have the money to do that. So I guess it's a question of, I know that there was some money from the state that we got through the pandemic, and but what's there kind of financially to invest in infrastructure long term. So, all these businesses aren't just kind of doing it on their own, because what's going to end up happening is it's going to kind of look like it does, kind of scattered and not really harmonious, and barriers at different sizes and looks, different heights, and not the best aesthetics, which is kind of a goal of what we're trying to do in the town center as well.
So I would also, I don't want to belabor this. I know the hour is late, but I skipped public comment or matters from the public, and I see that Heidi DeLeo has her hand raised. So if I want to let her just go ahead and speak on this. I know that this is something that she's very concerned about as a business owner on the street. So Heidi, do you want to go ahead?
Hi, thank you. As I spoke last week, the retailers on the street would like to limit as much taking away of the spaces as possible. I'm listening to the comments and I understand, but this is not Davis Square. It's not a commuter location. When people go to restaurants, they tend to park and they'll walk a little bit for a restaurant. Whereas if they're going to retail, they want to park, go in and get out. They're not there to dine for an hour or so. So I really feel that there's a lack of understanding about how those parking spaces that are taken up by outdoor dining really impact retail space. There's been a lot of leeway given to restaurants and funding and working with them to get their outdoor dining. And I love outdoor dining as much as the next person, but the reality is there's no equity in this. I mean, you're allowing them to do outdoor dining, and then you're talking about this new dog place being able to have some outdoor space, which is great, but then what about the rest of us? We all want to do something so that we increase our business. It just needs to be equitable. And I mean, I can't say enough how frustrated I am about the comments that I hear from everybody regarding giving more access to hogging up more parking spaces when all the retailers are suffering. And I'm not just speaking for myself, but I'm speaking for all the businesses on Thompson Street who I've spoken with, which is, I think, everyone except for 2 businesses. And it also is representative of my, the landlord, the person that owns my building, who has people living there. There's also people living on the street. And I think you really need to reevaluate what you're approving for outdoor dining and parking spaces. And we'll be keeping an eye on this. And if we don't feel that if we feel that it continues to be inequitable, I think you'll start to hear a lot more frustration from the general public and shoppers to downtown Winchester. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi.
Just to iterate, and from what Heidi had said specifically, I think that it's not just equity, but it's finding balance. And I think when what I see with the spot spaces out on Thompson Street, I've said it before, it just seems bizarre to me. And they do have outdoor dining already, options that they've built in, which looks fantastic. It's great. They've had that for a couple of years now. I've enjoyed being out there. So we're, by taking those locations out and providing more on-street parking to support the retailers there, it's not disproportionately affecting the spot, because they already have that outdoor dining in existence. If we're taking spots away from Black Horse or some of the other restaurants, they don't have that opportunity. So again, I don't want to punish the spot for already being ahead of the curve by building their own location, but it seems out of balance to provide those spaces on Thompson Street to a restaurant that already has outdoor dining of its own. So I don't know. It just continues to be weird. But
All right. Well,
it's something I've heard for the last, week and a half, consistently from many of the businesses in that area, including the new businesses that just opened up. So, I mean, it's a tough situation, but I mean, I think I looked at all the tables outside today at all the restaurants. The average, between 8 and 10, the spot, would be in that mix with just their outdoor patio and dining area that they've, since expanded since last year as well, since they were allowed to have those spots. They've expanded off their upper deck area. So.
okay, well, I guess that's going to have to be the last word. It is late, so the conversation will continue. So if we could move on to the, just quickly, the town moderator formally requested us to permit or approve having town meeting remotely. This is kind of a formality, but just that we would approve that letter that we got from the town moderator.
So I move that we approve the town moderator's request for remote town meeting for this spring's town meeting.
Second.
Roll call vote. Amy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. And then we have the Waterfield land development agreement.
So I move that we authorize the town manager to execute the land development agreement for the Waterfield lot.
Second.
As a sort of
Oh,
friend.
do you want me to say substantially in the form
Yes.
presented with final changes to be made by the town manager in her reasonable discretion in consultation with town council?
So I just, we did discuss some substantial changes, to that agreement. So I thought we're going to wait to approve the LDA. I mean, I don't know if we've already kind of voted it. I don't know if that puts us in a good bargaining position for those changes that we had recommended. It's kind of seems almost silly to have even schedule a meeting to discuss it, but if we're just going to approve it right now.
I thought we were approving that the town manager sign it with the changes that we discussed in executive session.
But we haven't proposed those changes to yet, right? So I mean, nobody's heard of those requests from us.
Lisa, I thought that the meeting on Thursday was to sort of go over what the response was from Civico, and we anticipated that most or all of the things that we discussed were going to be resolved, and that's why the vote was today. But
yep, the select board can vote on the LDA as agreed on by the select board. So if Civico agrees to those changes, then it's approved. If they don't agree, then I have to bring that back to the Thursday meeting. So we don't need the Thursday meeting if the board approves it as was constructed, and then Civico agrees.
Is that okay with you, Mike? Well,
so let me rephrase my motion. That to approve the land development agreement substantially in the form presented and as discussed with the changes discussed during our executive meeting, with those final changes to be made by the town manager in her reasonable discretion in consultation with town council, and to authorize the town manager to execute the land development agreement. If the counterparty doesn't agree to those changes, then we will bring it back to our vote on Thursday.
Second.
So a roll call vote. Amy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So we did have some appointments, or the town manager had some appointments. I want to forget those while the town manager is covering things. So back up on page 1. Yep, thanks.
In section 4-2, we have the town charter. I've made a few full-time appointments in the Department of Public Works. Dale Ingersoll to the transfer station scale operator, and they need to waive the 15-day appointment period.
I move that we waive the usual 15-day appointment period for Dale Ingersoll for DPW.
Second.
Roll call vote. Amy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
The second appointment is Chris Rockwell to special equipment operator, also requesting to waive the 15-day appointment period.
I move that we waive the customary 15-day appointment period for Chris Rockwell for DPW.
Second.
Amy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Is there anything else, Lisa?
I do have a quick update now that nobody's watching.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I did want to make an important point. So there are 47 new cases since last week, and with 41 active COVID cases. So this is incredibly concerning because we haven't seen these levels for a few months, since actually early February. Across the state, there have been the most cases among 20 to 29-year-olds, and then the 5 to 19-year-old or school-age kids are not far behind in the past 2 weeks. Household transmission, the recent holiday gatherings are the probable causes for that. So on my updates, we have weekly COVID testing, usually for $20 each, free for town employees, but we do have 3 free for Winchester student April vacation clinics or post-April vacation clinics. And the dates are here. Everything's at winchester.us/testing. I think this is incredibly important, especially given our rising cases. I have information here about sort of what's happening with the budget side. The House, Senate, and Ways Means Committee chairs basically agreed on local aid figures that are exact same as what the governor proposed, with a couple of changes. One is that there's a emergency relief fund that's going to be given out directly to the schools for a few years, totaling $1.2 million. There's going to be a reserve fund set aside for any discrepancies that come up in school enrollment. So again, that will go directly to the schools. And the town will be receiving a $215,000 community development block grant, and eligible activities they have to benefit low and moderate income persons, prevent or eliminate slums or blight, and address community development needs. So staff is just reviewing the guidelines right now and figuring out what potential proposals to put forward. DPW submitted a Green Communities grant for various projects around town. We also have the Municipal Vulnerability Action grants due by May 7th. We applied for 2 grants last year. We did not get any of them. Staff resources are actually pretty tight right now, so we don't really have anybody dedicated to putting together a grant application, never mind administering it, which is one of the reasons why we wanted the sustainability development position.
Great. Okay. So just quickly, again, when people are not listening, I just wanted to cover the Board of Registrars of Voters. I got some clarification from Town Council, and we have to follow the statute, not our regular process of asking people if they want to, incumbents if they want to be reappointed. Every time there's a vacancy, you have to take a look at the composition of the Board of Registrars, and that composition has to correspond with the distribution of registered voters in the town. And so right now the vacancy is occurring, and a registered Republican is in that seat. And that means that right now the composition is 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat. And it should be, based on the composition of the town, allocated differently. It should be 2 Democrats and 1 Republican. And every time there's a vacancy, you have to go back and reassess whether it's the composition follows the town's demographics. So I talked about this with Mary Ellen, and she, is out of town until Wednesday. But the plan would be to post this again and reach out to the Democratic Town Committee and have them do some more outreach, and then come back with 3 candidates for us to nominate somebody for this board after their next meeting. I think they usually have a monthly meeting, so that they should be able to do this in a month. So that's what we're going to do on that. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. There was a memo in your packet which lays it out pretty clearly.
Well, makes sense to me, Susan.
Okay.
Thank you.
And this position is, it's not terribly functional one, right? I mean, it's just kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a policy setting body or,
right.
A deliberative body. They really work with the town clerk to administer elections and check signatures. And, if there's ever a recount, they would be involved. So that's what they do.
Yeah. It's interesting in the sense that I'm not familiar so much with the Mass General Law on this, but it was helpful to get the memo from council. But it seems like the majority of our voters are actually unenrolled.
Yes.
So I mean, I don't know necessarily what purpose it serves. We're not really getting good data on who's doing what, but as the function is somewhat ceremonial, then
right.
It's fine.
Yep. And then we did need to talk about the warrant articles, who's going to cover what. And the subcommittee assignments. I think we should just put off the subcommittee assignments, if that's okay, until we can sort of talk more internally about what we want to do and set goals and so forth in May. But for the purposes of town meeting, we should probably go through this just to be sure we're all covering, that everything gets covered, and poor Mark doesn't have a nervous breakdown. So I don't know if we can share this. I don't know if Patty's still awake. Patty, do you have this?
I am, but I don't think I added it to this desktop to share.
Okay.
It would take me a few minutes.
All right. Well, I'll try to run through it verbally. So Article 1 is a report of the town officers, which would be the select board report, and usually the chair does that, and I can do that. I might need a little help from Mike, because he did the last one. Then the planning board is not ours. There's a zoning bylaw amendment. I think that's about driveways, and I don't think, when we get around to voting, whether we support different things, I would report that. I would, be the one to mention that. Then there's one, Article 4 is electronic voting, which was originally a citizens petition. So I'm thinking maybe the chair introduces that and then turns it over to the citizen group that wanted to propose that. Then there's the Article 5 is amending the bylaw so that we could have the option of scheduling a town election on Saturday, and I would cover that. Then we have the Article 6 is the Waterfield LDA, and I have either Mariano or Mike tentative, both of whom have a longer history and understand that whole project, and would speak to that, I think, with a little more authority to speak to town meeting members about that. So I don't know, would be interested in doing that. Mike has a lot of other things later on.
Yeah, I don't need to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can.
Waterfield.
I can do it.
Thank you, Mariano. Article 7 is the Glenwood Avenue property. It's pretty straightforward. Mike, do you want to do that, or should I do that?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do it. It's pretty light lifting. It's just changing the language for that property, the article. So it's
right. Great, thank you. And then the next one, 8, is the special legislation around the surcharge on the building permit fee to support sustainability. That's another one that is sort of your baby, Mike. So
yeah, I can stay with that.
Thank you. Then we have 9, which is the fiscal year 21 budget supplement. That's kind of a budget item, so it's not technically, it doesn't have to wait until May, but we'll see what happens. But I just want to be sure somebody's covering that. Maybe it's just the town manager.
I think that's usually FinCom, right? Who
Yeah.
presents that?
Is it FinCom?
It's both. FinCom
Okay.
presents it.
But everything that's highlighted in yellow is actually part of the consent agenda.
Oh, is that what's yellow? Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So just as a precaution, we're running through them, but they probably won't have to be presented. And the prior year payment, that's historic, and I guess the town manager would have the most familiarity with that. 11 is the water and sewer rate adjustment, and Amy and I had that last year. I was hoping Amy would carry the ball on this one this year.
Do that, that's fine.
Great, thanks. Parking meter fund, and then the cable access appropriation, that's pretty straightforward. And town manager, capital planning is capital planning. We got Article 13 is the transfer station facility engineering, which I think Mike has on his plate.
Yeah, I'm okay with the rest of those, how they're listed there, and I think that capital planning will probably be doing most of that. So
Okay.
Most of those.
And then the rest of these budget type items are also not things for us to necessarily allocate. So I guess that's it.
Yeah, the rest, Susan, you'll just say we voted favorable action.
Yeah, okay. All
And
right.
that's actually for all of them, just to make sure that will be what Heather will be asking at the meetings if the board voted favorable action.
Right, and you have a column for that so we can stay organized. Okay,
Yes.
very good.
This is a great spreadsheet, by the way, whoever put this together.
Yes, it is.
Helpful,
Mark did a good job of doing that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's big enough.
Then what you guys got is what I tweet.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Now,
really good.
is our next meeting before town meeting?
Yeah, the 26th.
Okay, because we haven't voted any of the articles yet.
I know.
Right.
That's the first day of town meeting, right?
Yes.
You want to add that to Thursday?
When is this meeting on Thursday?
Not
I don't
really.
know. if I missed it.
I'm pretty.
Sorry.
I have a busy day Thursday.
Yeah, I'm like swamped.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a trial.
Yeah, I mean, it might make sense to, if we don't need Thursday because of the LDA, if maybe putting this next Monday, just having a meeting for warrant articles on next Monday.
Now, next Monday is a holiday.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
I'm away as well.
That's the only reason why.
Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot it was.
Yeah.
Are you kidding? With it, the week before town meeting, there would have been a meeting if it wasn't a holiday.
Yeah, we're skipping a whole week of meetings. Okay. Well,
Town meeting starting early this year.
yeah,
So we'll just allocate more time on the 26th. We'll just start the meeting earlier. We definitely still need Thursday meeting, just to have that on the book. So Patty, you'll find a time that at least 3 people can make it.
And honestly, I don't think most of these are going to be surprises or controversial for us. So, we're not going to spend hours going through this. I mean, it's what we've been talking about. So it's,
Yeah,
it's not going to take long.
yeah, I was going to say, I don't think there's going to be any opposition from anybody, but there might be. I'm not telling anybody how to vote, but there's nothing that's controversial.
If there is, maybe give Susan or Mariano heads up beforehand so we can, if we're going to get tripped up on something. So we don't, we don't schedule 3 hours before town meeting.
Yeah, because we might do 5 minutes and just
Yeah,
take
it might
a
be
vote
5
on the
minutes.
whole thing, unless there's opposition. So yeah, if you're opposed to any of the motions, just
let me know.
Let Susan know so we schedule more time.
Yeah. Okay.
5 minutes sounds good.
Yeah, that's true. We don't do vote on each one individually. And then if we are going to meet on Thursday, Patty, can you handle picking a time for that? I mean, Thursday morning would work the best, I think, for me.
So just in taking a vote right now, there's only one available because Mike said he's busy Thursday. Rich has is in trial. Amy, you have a full schedule,
Oh,
did
right.
you say?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
And Mariano?
During the day, I have a full schedule.
Yeah.
I can in the evening.
So we could do this in the evening.
Or Friday morning.
No, it has to be by the 15th.
Okay.
The Waterfield.
And so it would have to be the Thursday evening. Lisa, is that still doable?
Yeah, it's the 15th by 11:59 p.m. So we want to schedule the meeting at 10 o'clock at night.
Can we extend it by a day or no?
The board could vote on that now. There is a Waterfield LDA on the agenda.
Extend the MOU, you mean?
I mean, if you need to, I don't know. Whatever you want to do.
Well, would 3 of you be available on Friday morning?
Yes.
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 Okay. Then I'll
So-
move to vote.
Yeah, so I move that we extend the deadline for the Waterfield LDA to Friday, April 16th
At 11:59.
at 11:59 p.m.
Second.
Roll call vote. Amy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So that's unanimous. And then we'll have to figure out, talking about priorities and committee assignments and our internal planning and organization, which we never get to because we're too busy doing all of the other stuff. So that will happen in May. And we have a consent agenda, right?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as printed on packet.
Second.
Roll call vote. Amy?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
And I vote yes. And I guess I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call vote. Amy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
We didn't even make it to 11. Look at that.
Oh, we could find something to talk about.
Yeah.
I think we're
It's a
officially
long
adjourned.
one.
But
We're adjourned.
but anyway.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
times. We'll see you soon.
Thanks,
Bye.
Lisa. Thanks, Patty. Bye.
Night.